While the auto waits, adapted after O. Henry, the girl in grey comes to that quiet corner of the small park every day. Her simple dress fits her perfectly. The girl is slim and very beautiful. The young man also comes to that park every day. He is eager to get acquainted with the girl, but he doesn't know how to introduce himself. The girl is sitting on a bench reading a book. Suddenly she drops the book. The man picks it up and returns the book to the girl. The girl is looking at him, at his ordinary coat and his common face. He is embarrassed. "Do you know that you are the most attractive girl I've ever seen?" he says. But the girl interrupts him. "Whoever you are," she says in an icy tone, "you must remember that I am a lady." "I beg your pardon," pleads the young man. "It is my fault. Stop excusing, if you please. Let's better speak about these people who are passing by. Where are they going? Why are they hurrying so? Are they happy?" "It is interesting to watch them," he replies. "It is the wonderful drama of life. Some are going to supper and some to, other places. I want to know their histories." "I do not," says the girl. "I am not so inquisitive. I come here because it's the only place where I can be among simple people. I am very rich. I am tired of money. I am sick of pleasure, of parties, of travel, of society." The young man looks at her with interest and astonishment. "As to me, I always had an idea that money must be a very good thing," he says. "Not when you are very rich," returns the girl in grey. She is smiling. "You don't seem to be a rich man. It is such a comfort to speak with a man unspoiled by money." "By the way, what is your profession?" she asks. The young man hesitates for a moment. "I am a cashier in, he looks at the brilliant electric sign restaurant across the street. "I am a cashier in that restaurant you see there." The girl looks at her watch and rises hurriedly. "Why aren't you working then?" she asks. "I am on the night turn today," says the young man. "It is yet now before my works begins." "May I hope to see you again?" "I do not know. Perhaps. But now I must go quickly. There is a dinner, and a box at the play, and, oh, I am so tired of all these things. Perhaps you noticed the white automobile, which is waiting for me at the entrance. I always come in that. May I accompany you to the auto?" "It is dark now," says the young man. "If you respect my wishes," says the girl firmly, "you will remain here while I am going to my auto." "I don't want my driver Pierre to see you." And she goes away. The young man looks at her elegant figure and then goes after her. The girl is passing the white auto and quickly enters the restaurant with the brilliant electric sign. She takes the cashier's place. The young man smiles and walks slowly back. He gets in the white automobile and says 2 words to the driver. "Club, Henry." Singing lesson, adapted by Catherine Mansfield. With a heavy heart, Miss Meadows was walking along the cold corridors that led to the music hall. Forms 4, 5 and 6 were waiting for her there. She struck the piano with her baton. "Silence, please." Immediately. Her voice sounded cold and hard. She was still thinking of the letter she had received that morning. It filled her with unhappiness. "I feel more and more strongly that our marriage could be a mistake. Not that I do not love you. I love you as much as it is possible to love a woman, but I don't think I am a marrying man. Alone in the world again. Oh, how painful it is." Hadn't she known that nothing would come of it? Miss Meadows said in a voice of ice. Page 14, please. A lament. What could be more tragic than a lament? How she had always looked forward to their meetings. How good-looking Basil was. And he knew it, too. "The headmaster's wife keeps inviting me to dinner. I never get an evening to myself." "But can't you refuse?" "Oh, well, I can't hurt her. And then it may ruin my chances." The voices were silent. The piano was waiting. "Quite good," said Miss Meadows, but still in such a voice that the younger girls felt frightened. Suddenly the door opened. A little girl in blue came up to her. "Well, Monica, what is it?" "Oh, if you please, Miss Meadows," said the little girl, "Miss Wyatt wants to see you." The headmistress was sitting at her desk. "I sent for you just now because this telegram has come for you. I hope it isn't bad news." Too excited to say anything, Miss Meadows opened the telegram. "Don't think about letter was mad bought hat stand today Basil." She rose. She half ran towards the door. "Oh, just 1 minute. "Miss Meadows," said Miss Wyatt firmly, "I must say I don't like my teachers to receive telegrams in school hours." Filled with hope, love and joy, she ran back to the music hall page. She sang out and turned away so that nobody could see that she was smiling. "We come here today with flowers and joy." "Stop, stop!" cried Miss Meadows. "This is awful. What's the matter with you today?" Think of what you're singing. Use your imagination. It should sound warm, happy and eager." Once again. Quickly, "Now then." And this time Miss Meadows' voice sounded over all the other voices, full, deep and rich. Love for Art, adapted by O. Henry. Joe Larry was from the Middle West. At 6 he painted his first picture. At 20 he left for New York. His dream was to take lessons and become a great painter. Delia Silver lived in a pine tree village in the South and played the piano rather promisingly. Her relatives gave her some money to go north and finish. Joe and Delia met in a studio where a number of art and music students spoke about Wagner, music, Rembrandt's works, pictures and many other things. Soon Joe and Delia got married. They lived in a very small flat, but they were happy. They loved each other. Joe was painting in the class of one great painter. His fees were high. Delia was studying under a very famous pianist. They were very happy as long as their money lasted. But one day they found they had no more money to pay the teachers. Their life became hard. There were days when they had nothing to eat. One day Delia said she had to give music lessons. A few days later she came home and told her husband that she would teach music to a general's daughter. The girl's name was Clementina, but Joe did not seem to like this idea. "Do you think I can see you work and do nothing myself? I must work, too. I may sell some of my pictures," said Joe. And so Delia went to the general's house to teach music to his daughter Clementina. And every morning Joe went to Central Park to paint his pictures. After a week Joe brought home $0. "Where did you get the money, Joe?" asked Delia. "Yesterday I sold one of my pictures to a gentleman from the country," he said. "Is he going to buy some more pictures?" "Yes, he is. He asked me to paint another one for him." "Oh, Joe, how glad I am," answered Delia. Next week Delia came with her right hand bandaged. "What's this?" asked Joe, taking the hand tenderly. Delia began to laugh. "Oh, it's such a funny story. Clementina spilt some sauce on my hand. She was very sorry about it, but it's nothing. It doesn't hurt much." "Why are you looking so, Joe?" Joe took her hand in his, looked into her eyes and asked, "What do you do every day, Delia? Do you really teach a general's daughter? Can you tell me the truth?" Delia sat, looking at the floor for a while. Then she said, "I could not get any pupils, but I didn't want you to give up your lessons. And I got a place ironing shirts in one big laundry. Today one of the girls burned my hand with an iron." "Why didn't you tell me about it earlier?" asked Joe. "I didn't want you to know it, but how did you guess that I did not give any music lessons?" "I suspected nothing until tonight, when I saw the bandages. I had to send these bandages upstairs for a girl in the laundry." "How did you happen to be there?" asked Delia. "You see, I work in the machine room of the same laundry where you work." Getting Known, adapted by D.H. Barber. The latest book of my poems has not been selling very well. In fact, of my personal friends and relations tell me they've bought it, but the publishers say only copies have been sold. "The trouble is," said Edith, "that nobody has ever heard of you. What you need is a little advertisement. Let people know that you exist and that you write poetry, and they will rush along to the libraries and ask for your latest book." "But I can't just put an advertisement in the newspaper saying I'm a poet." Edith thought for a moment and then she said she had a bright idea. "Why not put an advertisement in the Times," she said, "saying that you recommend as butler in a small family a man who has been in your employment for 20 years. "But I haven't had anybody in my employment for 20 years, I said, "and I've never kept a butler of any sort, as you know very well. And how can I sell more copies of my poems by pretending that I wanted to find work for a non-existent butler who hasn't been in my employment for 20 years? "You're not very bright this morning," said Edith. "Don't you know that the most successful sort of advertisement is the sort that doesn't look like an advertisement? You ought to do something like this." She got a piece of paper and a pen and wrote the following: "Mr. L. Conkelshill, The poet, author of Raspberry Bushes and Other Poems, strongly recommends as butler in a small family his present head man, who has been with him for 20 years. The idea is not bad, I said, but I refuse to do anything so dishonest. I absolutely forbid you to do it. As a matter of fact, I secretly rather liked the idea, and I thought that when I absolutely forbade Edith to do it, she would pay the money herself and send in the advertisement. For some days, however, she did nothing, although I was careful to keep reminding her that I absolutely forbade her to send the advertisement. Nearly always this sort of treatment produces the desired effect. Although I looked in the Times every morning, the advertisement didn't appear. Edith went away to stay with a sick aunt, and I forgot all about the matter. Then came the event of the man with the dog. He was a big man, and the dog was a big dog, and they both stood outside the front door and made noises at me. "I'll take the money now," said the man in a bad-tempered voice. "What money is this?" I said politely. "Something due for milk supplied?" "Nonsense," said the man. £2 I want for the dog." "I don't want a dog," I said uncertainly. Ours was a lonely sort of road, and the man was a big sort of man, and it would perhaps be wiser to buy the dog. "Don't want the dog," said the man in an unpleasant voice. At last I bought the dog for 30 shillings. I was weak, perhaps, but Edith had been saying for a long time that we ought to have a dog. I gave the dog some meat and locked him in the kitchen, and went back to my poem. Then the bell rang again, and I found 2 men on the step, both with large dogs. This time I didn't argue. I just shut the door and went and looked at myself in the glass. I was worried. Were the dogs real, or were they the result of that last glass of whiskey? I went up to my bedroom and looked down the long road that leads to the station. I could see 6 men with 6 dogs. Then the solution of the problem came to me, and I looked at the lost and found advertisements in the Times. Mr. L. Conkleshill offers £1 reward for the return of faithful dog Gogo, who first awakened the ideas in Faithful Eyes in his new book of poems. Edith said afterwards that I hadn't told her she mustn't put in an advertisement about a dog. Bella Fleece gave a party, adapted by Evelyn Waugh. Miss Annabel Rochford Doyle Fleece, to give her the full name, was the last of her family. She was over 80, very untidy and very red. The present home had been built in the 18th century, when the family was still rich. It could not, of course, compare with Gordon Town, where the American Lady Gordon had all modern conveniences, electric light, central heating and a lift. In the winter before the one we are talking of, she had been dangerously ill. In April she was better, but slower in her movements and mind. In June, for the first time, she invited her heir to visit her. Bella disliked him from the moment he arrived. One day he came to Bella carrying several books from the library. "I say, did you know you had these?" he asked. "I did," Bella lied. "All first editions. You put them back where you found them." Bella had often heard that books cost a lot of money. So she wrote a letter to a Dublin bookseller. He came to see the library. When he left, he paid her £1,000 for the 6 books, and so it happened that Bella decided to give a party. She called her butler and explained the idea to him. Bella started the preparations. Cheerfully she wrote the names of the guests on the cards and addressed the envelopes. She did not include the names of several people on her list. On the day of the ball she woke up early, nervous with excitement, turning over in her mind every detail of the preparations. At 7:45 Bella took her place at the head of the stairs. The house looked wonderful in the candlelight. The clock struck 8. Bella waited. Nobody came. At 12:30 Bella got up from her chair. "Riley, I think I will have some supper. I don't feel well." But just as she was leaving the dining room there was some movement. Guests were arriving. Riley met them and announced, "Lord and Lady Mockstock, Sir Samuel, and Lady Gordon." On the stairs, facing her, were the 2 women she had not invited, Lady Mockstock the draper's daughter, Lady Gordon the American. She looked at them with her colorless eyes. "I had not expected this honor," she said. "Please forgive me if I am unable to entertain you." Miss Fleece suddenly sat down and said, "I don't know what's going on." Riley and 2 of the servants carried the old lady to a sofa. A day after she died, Mr. Banks came from London. Among the things he found in her desk were the invitations to the ball, stamped, addressed, but unposted. How We Kept Mother's Day by Stephen Eacock. We decided to have a special celebration of Mother's Day. We thought it a fine idea. It made us realize how much Mother had done for us for years, and all the efforts and sacrifices that she had made for our sake. So we decided that we'd make it a great day, a holiday for all the family, and do everything we could to make our mother happy. Father decided to take a holiday from his office, so as to help in celebrating the day, and my sister Anne and I stayed home from college classes, and Mary and my brother stayed home from high school. It was our plan to make it a day just like Christmas or any big holiday, and so we decided to decorate the house with flowers. We asked Mother to do it, because she always does it. The two girls thought it would be a nice thing to dress in our best for such a big occasion, and so they both got new hats. Father had bought silk ties for himself and us boys. We were going to get Mother a new hat too, but it turned out that she liked her old hat better than a new one. After breakfast we decided that we would hire a motor car and take Mother for a beautiful drive away into the country. Mother is hardly ever able to have a treat like that, because she is busy in the house nearly all the time. But on the very morning of the day we changed the plan a little bit. We all felt that it would be nicer to have a definite purpose. It turned out that Father had just got a new rod the day before, and he said that Mother could use it if she wanted to. In fact, he said it was practically for her, only Mother said she would rather watch him fish than fish herself. So we got everything ready for the trip. Mother cut up some sandwiches and packed all up in a basket for us. When the car came to the door, it turned out that we couldn't all get in. Father said that he could stay at home and work in the garden. There was a lot of dirty work that he could do. He said that he wanted us to be happy and have a big day. The girls said that Mother had only to say the word and they'd gladly stay at home and work. In the end it was decided that Mother would stay at home and have a lovely restful day round the house. It turned out anyway that Mother didn't care for fishing, and also it was just a little bit cold and fresh out of doors, though it was lovely and sunny, and Father was afraid that Mother might take cold if she came. So we all drove away and Mother stood and watched us as long as she could see us. We had the loveliest day. Father and the boys fished. The girls met quite a lot of people. We all had a splendid time. It was quite late when we got back. The dinner was ready. It was grand. Mother had to get up and down during the meal fetching things back and forward, but at the end Father noticed it and said she simply mustn't do it. When the dinner was over all of us wanted to help clear the things up and wash the dishes, only Mother said that she would really much rather do it. It was quite late when it was all over, and when we all kissed Mother before going to bed, she said it had been the most wonderful day in her life, and I think there were tears in her eyes. The man WHO took notice of notices. My Uncle Tom used to work on the railway. It wasn't a big station. Only about 2 trains a day stopped there, and Tom was a station master, chief porter and signalman all in one. In fact, Tom did any work that came along, and there wasn't a happier man in the whole of England. The waiting room of the station was cleaned every day by the chief cleaner, Tom. The chairs were polished by the chief polisher, Tom. The tickets were sold and collected by the chief ticket collector, Tom. Sometimes there were as many as 4 tickets a day, and the money was counted by the chief clerk, Tom. The station was run very well. Tom was very strict about the rules. He knew what a passenger was allowed to do and what he wasn't allowed to do, where a passenger was allowed to smoke and where he wasn't allowed to smoke. He was there for 0 years and he never missed a single day, and then he had to retire. Well, a little farewell ceremony was planned by the railway company and a man from the head office was asked to go to the station for the ceremony. Tom was thanked and given a small check as a present. Tom was very pleased. Of course, but he said, "I don't need the money, but can I have, instead, something that will remind me of the happy days I have spent here? Could the company let me have a part of an old railway carriage? Just 1 compartment? It doesn't matter how old and broken it is. I want to put it into my back garden and every day I could go and sit in it." About a week later a compartment was sent and placed in his back garden. Tom worked at it. He cleaned it and painted it and polished it, and in a week or so it looked very nice. One day, about a year after Tom retired, we decided to visit him. It was a bad day for a visit. It was raining hard. We knocked but there was no answer. However, the door wasn't locked and we went in. There was no one inside and we went out at the back. Sure enough, he was there, but he wasn't sitting in the carriage. He was outside, on the step of the carriage, smoking a pipe. His head was covered with a sack and the rain was running down his back. "Hello Tom," I said. "Why are you sitting there? Why don't you go inside the carriage out of the rain?" "Can't you see?" said Tom. "The carriage they sent me was a non-smoker." From Essential English by C.E. Eckersley. A Sad Story, abridged by George Sheffield. "You are the doctor, I suppose," said Augustus Pockwhistle, smiling from his bed at the immense man who had arrived secretly while he slept. "It is kind of you to come, but I fear you cannot help me. However, as you are here, I will tell you, very shortly, what is wrong with me. I am an artist. I paint pictures and I draw drawings. You are going to tell me that you are not interested in the story of my life." Augustus laughed bitterly. "But I suppose you have been sent here by some interfering so-called friend of mine, and I must therefore explain my illness, and you cannot understand my illness unless I tell you the story of my life. But I was delicately brought up, and it soon became clear that I was not an ordinary boy. At the age of 7 I won a prize for a drawing of an animal. We will forget the fact that I had intended my drawing to represent sunset over London. After that my proud parents provided me with plenty of pencils and paper and gave me the opportunity of studying under great painters. At the age of 21 I started business as a painter of people, and painted 11 pictures of my own face. If you go into my sitting room, you will see them hanging sadly on the wall. But nobody came to have their pictures painted, and I had no heart to paint any more of myself. But let me finish, and then you can say but as often as you like. I turned from painting people to painting the country. 9 times I painted the view from the back window, and 7 times I painted the view from the front window. But could I sell the 7 pictures of the view from the front window, or the 9 of the view from the back window? I could not. I had little money left, and I decided, after a severe struggle with myself, to forget my soul and paint for money. I determined to draw funny pictures for the newspapers. But I know what you are going to say. If I had had the soul of a true artist, I would have died rather than do such a thing. But remember that my wife and children were crying for bread, or would have been crying for bread if I had had a wife and children. And was it my fault that I hadn't a wife and little children? So I made 30 or 40 funny drawings every day and sent them to the papers. I soon found that selling one's soul for money is not so easy as it sounds. Believe it or not, I got no money. I just got my drawings back. But you may well ask why they were sent back. I cannot tell you. Then I sank lower and lower. I tried drawing for advertisements, clothes, pianos, bottles. I sent them off by the 100. But so I gave up the struggle. My heart was broken, and I determined to take to my bed, never to rise again. You cannot help me, doctor. I feel it in my bones that I shall never rise from this bed. And I feel it in my bones that you will, said the stranger, carefully placing Augustus Pockwhistle on the carpet, because I've come to take it away. I'm from the furniture shop, and the bed isn't paid for. Mabel, adapted by Somerset Maugham. They became engaged when he was home on leave. He returned to Burma and she was to join him in 6 months. But one difficulty followed the other, so in the end it was 7 years before she was able to start. He made all the arrangements for the marriage which was to take place on the day of her arrival and went down to Rangoon to meet her. He paced the quay. He hadn't seen Mabel for years. She was a total stranger. He felt that he couldn't carry out his promise. He was awfully sorry. How could a man refuse a girl after she had traveled 6,000 miles to marry him? An idea struck him. He would write her a letter and she would understand the rest. There was a boat at the quay on the point of starting to Singapore. He wrote a hurried letter to Mabel and without any luggage boarded the ship. The letter Mabel received ran as follows: Dearest Mabel, I am away on business and don't know when I'll be back. It would be much wiser if you return to England. My plans are very uncertain. Your loving George. But when he arrived to Singapore he found a cable waiting for him. Quite understand. Don't worry. Love, Mabel. He had to think fast. He was able very quickly to find out that her name was on the passenger list of the ship that was now on its way to Singapore. There was not a moment to be lost. Fortunately, there was a French boat sailing next day to Saigon. He took it. At Saigon he would be safe, and surely by now she would be able to take the hint. When he was signing his name in the visitor's book in Saigon, a telegram was handed to him. Love, Mabel. He sailed to Hong Kong immediately, but dared not stay there. He went to Manila, but there he didn't feel safe either. He had to hide in some place where he wouldn't be able to run straight into Mabel's arms. He went to Yokohama. At the Grand Hotel a cable awaited him. So sorry to have missed you at Manila. Love, Mabel. No, he was not so easy to catch like that. He had already made his plans. He went to Chengdu 0. It was 400 miles away. It could only be reached by road, and the road was very difficult. A man would be safe there. He could rest at last. Mabel would never find him there. The consul happened to be a friend of his and he stayed with him. The weeks passed lazily one after the other. One day the heavy doors of the consulate opened and Mabel stepped out of a chair borne by 4 coolies. She looked neat and clean as usual. George grew pale as death. She went up to him with a smile. "You haven't changed at all," she said. "I was afraid that you'd go fat and bald after 7 years. I've been so nervous. It would be terrible if after all these years I simply wouldn't be able to bring myself to marry you." She turned to the consul. "Are you the consul?" "Yes." "That's all right. I'm ready to marry him as soon as I've had a bath." And she did. Noisy neighbors. Sybil, Sydney. Sydney. Wake up, Sydney. What? What's the matter? It can't be 8 o'clock already. Sybil, no. It's 1:30. It's those people next door again. Listen, Sydney. Oh, yes. They must be having another party. Sybil, listen to that. They must be waking up the whole street. And they've got 3 young children. They can't be sleeping through that noise. It's disgusting. Somebody should call the police. Sydney. Wake up, Sydney. I wasn't asleep, dear. They're all laughing. They must be having a good time. They never invite us, do they? Sybil. Sydney. Sydney. Yes, dear. What is it now? Sybil. Listen. They must be leaving. Sydney. Thank goodness for that. Maybe we'll get some sleep. Sybil. I hope so. It's nearly 3 o'clock. Good night, dear. Sydney. Oh, hell. They're having a row now. Sybil. I'm not surprised. They always have rows after parties. Oh, they must be throwing the pots and pans again. Sydney. No, I think that was a plate, dear, or maybe the television. They will be sorry in the morning. Sybil. Sydney. Wake up, Sydney. Oh, what's that? Sybil. He can't be hammering at this time of night. Sydney. What time is it? Sybil. 4 o'clock. What can they be doing at 4 o'clock in the morning? Sydney. I can't hear any voices. Go back to sleep, Sybil. Sybil. Sydney. Listen, there's someone in the garden next door. Sydney. It must be the milkman. Sybil. No, it can't be. It's too early. It's only 4:45. Who could it be? You'd better have a look. Sydney. All right. Ooh, it's Mr. Sykes. And he's carrying a spade. Sybil. Oh, no. You don't think he's killed her, do you? Sydney. Well, we haven't heard her voice for a while. No, she's probably sleeping. Sybil. But what can he be doing at this time of night? Sydney. If he had killed her, he might be burying the body. Sybil. What? You don't think so, do you? Sydney. Well, he can't be planting potatoes. Can he? I suppose you want me to phone the police. Sybil. No. Ask him what he's doing first. Sydney. Hello. There. Mr. Sykes. You're up early this morning. Mr. Sykes, I haven't been to bed yet. We had a party last night. I hope we didn't keep you awake. Sydney. Oh, no. We didn't hear anything. Nothing at all. Mr. Sykes. Well, it was a pretty noisy party. My wife knocked over the goldfish tank while we were clearing up. The poor fish died. I'm just burying them before the children wake up. From Streamline English 3 by B. Hartley. The Flying Dutchman, a Dutch legend. Once upon a time a Dutch ship left the East Indies and sailed for Holland. The Dutch had rich colonies in the East Indies, and many young men from Holland who served as sailors, landed at Java and settled there. Diedrich was a young Dutch lad who had no father or mother. and did all kinds of work to earn a living for himself. He got work as a sailor on a ship going to Java. At Java he worked for a rich planter. He spent very little and saved his money. After some years he had enough money to buy a piece of land and a house. Then he bought more land and houses, and it was not long before he became quite rich. But he never forgot the hard time he had when he was a boy. He thought of a plan and decided to carry out that plan. He sold his land and houses in Java, put the money he received into bags and then went on board a ship going back to Holland. He was the only passenger on the ship, for it was a trading ship. But he was a pleasant man and was soon friendly with the captain and all the crew. One day, when the ship was not far from the Cape of Good Hope, Dietrich sat with the captain, and they talked about their early life and their plans for the future. "And what," said Dietrich to the captain, "are you going to do after you have made a few more voyages and have saved enough money so that you don't have to go to sea anymore?" "I know well," said the captain, "I am going to buy a little house and live in it with my wife and children." "Then you have children?" "Yes, I have," said the captain, and he told Dietrich their names and how old each one was and how clever they all were. At last the captain asked Dietrich, "And what will you do?" "Ah, I have no wife or children, and there is no one in all Holland who will be glad to see me when I come home." Then he suddenly told the captain his great plan. "I have made a great deal of money, which I am carrying home with me. Now I shall tell you what I am going to do with it. In Amsterdam there are many poor children, perhaps even poorer than I was when a child, who have no home. I am going to build a great house and live in it. And I am going to have the biggest family in Amsterdam. I shall take only the poorest children, and they will be my sons and daughters. And you will bring them to my house," laughed the captain, "and your children and mine will play together." So they talked and talked until it was very late, and then they went to their cabins. Now the man who steered the ship heard everything they said, and so learned about the bags of gold that belonged to Dietrich and that were now on the ship. He wanted that gold, and he thought and thought how he could get it. He knew it was impossible for him alone to seize it, and so he whispered the secret to one of the sailors and then to a few other sailors. The crew was not a good one. The captain hired them in a hurry just before the ship left Holland. There were many criminals among them. They were wicked men, and when they found out about the gold that was on board, they were ready for anything. When the ship was near the Cape of Good Hope, the sailors seized the captain and Dietrich and tied them. Now the ship was in the hands of the wicked crew. These men then threw the captain and Dietrich, each tied hand and foot, into the sea. "Dead men tell no tales," said the man who steered the ship. Then they sailed for the nearest port, but as they sailed, a horrible plague broke on board. It was plague that made the men terribly thirsty. They fought to get some water in the water casks, and spilled all the water they had. So they were in the middle of the salt sea, with salt water all around them, but without a drop of fresh water to drink. Without a captain but with bags of gold on board, they were afraid to come near land. However, their thirst was so great that they sailed toward the nearest port. But when they came into the port, the people saw that they had the plague and refused to let them land. "We have a great deal of gold," the crew cried with their dry mouths. "Only give us water." But the people ran away. It was the same when they came to the next port, and the next. So they turned back to the ports of the east. Then a great storm broke out and the wind drove them far out in the sea. When the wind died down, they again steered for the land. But when they were near the land, another storm broke out and the wind again drove them far out into the sea. That was years and years ago. But when ships are sailing around the Cape of Good Hope, through the fog and mist and darkness of the night they see a phantom ship sailing, never reaching land. There is always a strong wind which drives the ship away from land. The sails of the ship are torn, the masts are white, and there are pale figures moving about the deck. Then the sailors whisper to each other, "Look, there is the Flying Dutchman." Supplementary reading. Communication. What is communication? The dictionary defines it, giving or exchanging information or news by speaking or writing. In today's world, long-distance communication is easy. We can call people on the telephone, send them telegrams, faxes, electronic messages or write them letters. We receive news and other information on radio or television every day. Our modern inventions allow us to communicate with people in every part of our planet. In early times, how did people communicate over long distances? How did they tell other people about a storm that was coming or an enemy who was planning to attack? At first, people probably used their feet. When the people of one village wanted to send a message to someone who was far away, they gave the news to a runner. This messenger ran to the nearest village and gave the message to another runner. Then the second runner took it to a third runner, and so on. This was a very slow method of communication, and the message didn't always reach its destination. The messengers had to run through forests and fields, cross rivers, and climb mountains. Sometimes they met wild animals and never arrived at the next village, and the messages frequently became mixed up, because each person who received the information changed it a little. People used other methods of communication, too. Cyrus the Great, who founded the Persian Empire, built a series of towers. A man with a very strong voice stood on each tower. When the king wanted to send a message, he gave it to the man on the first tower, who shouted it to the man on the second tower, who relayed it to the man on the third tower. These messengers usually used megaphones, which made their voices louder. The use of the fire and smoke was another primitive way of communication. People used blankets or leafy branches to control the puffs of smoke that came from a fire. The number and size of the puffs made a kind of code. This method wasn't very efficient on rainy days or at night, and little wind could mix up the message very badly. A few old methods of communication are still in use today. One of these methods is the use of drums. Some drums are made of hollow logs and animal skins. When the drummer hits the drum, it makes a noise that sounds a little like human speech. Drum beats travel quickly, but they can travel only a little way. In 0, a man in France invented the semaphore, which was a tall pole with arms at the top. Ropes moved the arms up and down to form letters of the alphabet. Semaphore operators were able to relay messages very quickly. A kind of semaphore is still in use on railroads, but efficient long-distance communication had to wait for the discovery of electricity. From English for a Changing World, Effective Business Communications, Abridged, Facing a World of Change and Choice. Peter Howard, Managing Director, Royal Mail, advises to put some questions before using any way of communication. Business success in the 90s is dependent more than before on partnership with employees, shareholders, customers and suppliers. And, no doubt, partnership demands good communication. We now have a vast number of ways to communicate, and the choice is growing rapidly. Directors of companies face with a wide range of communication options. It is difficult to choose one of them when sending and collecting information, both internally and externally. To this days when speed seems to be the principal requirement, it is easy to be attracted by instantaneous electronic media. Electronic media may be suitable, but it is important to take into account one crucial question. It is the question which should determine the choice of communication. Is it the most suitable and cost-effective method available? Few companies ask this question. This means that resources are often wasted. Distribution costs should not be taken lightly. These costs can account for 5% of company turnover. Directors should ask themselves simple questions. For example, is the use of fax really reasonable for every urgent communication? After all, first-class post delivers 9 out of 10 items by midday the next day. It is as effective as other distribution methods, and only per item. Or, how effective is a verbal agreement if it is subsequently disputed? Most companies still do business confirming a business deal by letter. So, before choosing one or another communication, every business needs to ask itself some searching questions. From a director's guide. Is it urgent? Naomi Kane, business writer, takes a critical look at the cult of urgency. The business community is an avid follower of the cult of urgency. The cult of urgency might be good news for the communications industries, but is it good news for companies and their costs? Modern technology allows even the smallest company to communicate with the speed that was impossible years ago. A fax in the office, rather like a video in the home, is now a necessity, not a luxury, and electronic and voicemail are increasingly the norm. But technology is misused for 2 reasons. 1, it is often easier to send a message by electronic mail than by post. 2, without proper training, Staff may only feel comfortable with one communication system. So, you may ask your secretary to send a message urgently because you do not have the time to sit down and compose a letter. He or she may choose a more expensive form of distribution because of ignorance. Define urgency. Company directors need to start defining urgency. According to Royal Mail, when asked to send something urgently, 2/3 of companies head for the fax machine. Yet percent define urgent as delivery by noon the next day. Royal Mail delivers 9 out of 10 first-class letters the next working day. Special delivery and registered letters are guaranteed to arrive by 0 p.m. the following working day. If a first-class stamp costs £0, and a 5-page, long-distance fax sent at peak time costs £0, and it is obvious to make some savings. So, a company must select a suitable distribution method, according to cost and other criteria such as durability and presentation. A letter, for example, has a longer shelf life than an electronic message, and a corporate brochure is smarter than a fax. Nowadays, it is difficult not to be mesmerized by the modern cult of urgency, but in the interests of cost savings, and possibly our health, we should stop asking how we can communicate faster and start to question whether we can communicate better. Some communication options. Integrated Services Digital Network, ISDN. For some time it has been possible to conduct meetings by video with colleagues across town or across the world. Now, with the development of equipment that can exploit the Integrated Services Digital Network, ISDN, it is possible to talk to someone by telephone, see a video image of them and share a computer screen. Both parties can amend the screen, even if the application's software is used and only available on one of the computers. This is known as desktop conferencing. ISDN is highly complex and opens up a whole array of services. Computer Integrated Telephony, CIT, for example, has great implications for telephone banking. It means that banks can use calling line identification, CLI, to access customers' banking records before the telephone itself is even answered, saving time and improving customer service. Fax machines work by converting text and graphics into a series of electronic pulses. Fax machines transmit these pulses over the telephone lines and reconstruct them into a duplicate or facsimile of the original at the receiving machine. Fax is the ideal medium for rapid and informal messaging, and it has become an important part of business communications. Fax has the advantage of speed. The cost of using fax is difficult to evaluate. A very short fax can be cheaper than the post. An alternative to using a standalone fax machine is to install a PC fax card in the back of your PC. This enables you to generate a fax on your computer and send it over the telephone lines without printing it out first and feeding it into a fax machine. If you work at a PC and prepared to generate and to send your own faxes, PC fax is ideal for sending messages to the outside world. A word of warning, however, it is not as good at receiving them. Electronic mail companies with computer network can use electronic mail, or email as it is known, to communicate both internally and with the outside world. Electronic mail is exactly as it sounds. Instead of writing a letter on paper, addressing it and putting it in the post, you generate it on your PC. Give it an electronic destination and send it over your computer network. Despite the advantages of fax and email, they pale in comparison to the current telecommunications revolution. Telephone and computer technologies are converging and change radically the way businesses communicate, both nationally and internationally. Advances in electronic communications. David Tebbutt, technology writer, looks at the impact of innovation on business communications. The telephone callers increasingly find themselves talking to answering machines. The callers lose the traditional immediacy of a telephone call. Many companies have instituted electronic voice messaging for all their staff. This system is convenient for the user but frustrates the caller. Many staff hide behind this, then filter the messages they want to deal with. On the one hand, it may make more efficient their daily work, but on the other hand, it could ultimately work against their company. Electronic mail. At least with electronic mail, no one expects immediacy. A message is sent in the knowledge that the recipient will reply at the earliest convenient moment. if he or she considers the message worth reading. Either the sender has to be important to the recipient or he has to be very creative when he gives the message a title. Urgent simply doesn't work anymore. Many users are introducing intelligent agents into their computer systems to read and filter the mail for them. This is a dangerous practice, but as computer networks proliferate, users have to do something not to be overwhelmed. Electronic mail is becoming an increasing part of the executive's day, and it's easy to see where the time goes. Many computer company executives think nothing of spending 2 or 3 hours a day dealing with various kinds of electronic communication. Telephone and video conferencing. Telephone conferencing and video conferencing can save a great deal of money by eliminating travel and accommodation expenses, providing all parties are prepared to hook up at the same time. This is a most effective way of conducting meetings between geographically dispersed people, especially if they know each other well. As computer power becomes cheaper and their telephone networks become more capacious, video conferencing at the desktop computer will become more viable. This has the added advantage. It allows users to share screen displays and filed information. A number of whiteboard systems exist which allow several users to contribute to the same document while it is displayed on the computer screen. An engineering drawing, for example, could be displayed and then each participant could add their own remarks. Video mail. The next stop on from voicemail, has advantage of sincerity. If you can see the sender as they speak a message, you can get a good feeling for their mood. "I'm sorry" said with a shrug somehow means more than a cold "I'm sorry" in electronic mail or voicemail. The other advantage of video is that objects and documents can be held up to the camera, to illustrate a point. Personal communicators. Within 10 years, hand communicators will be commonplace. They will contain all the important information relating to our lives. Anything else will be delivered to our communicator simply by asking for it. Communications with friends, colleagues and business associates will take place instantly and with almost no effort on the part of the owner of one of these marvelous devices. We have already seen the first of these arrive in the guise of personal digital assistant, or PDAs. Until they can communicate, they are little more than expensive personal organizers. Give them the ability to communicate and life is transformed. A company called General Magic has invented 2 technologies that will drive the uptake of these new machines. The first is called Magic Cap, which presents the user with a graphical view of their world divided into the desktop, the hallway and downtown. The desktop contains things like stationery, in tray, out tray, address cards and calculator. The hallway 0 shows a corridor with doors leading into different application areas, games, library and so on. Downtown is just like a town containing all the user's favorite electronic stores, from newsagents to bank, from travel agent to post office. We will be able to visit all these places electronically and conduct our business from our personal communicators. The General Magic technology which underpins downtown is called Telescript. With Telescript-equipped programs, your own electronic agents will go off into the world's networks to do your order. It takes you just a second to receive information from them. The rest of the time your electronic agents act alone, gathering news, putting together parties and so on. In other words, they do everything you want them to do. The Bermuda Triangle, a mystery of the ocean. Ever since man started to explore outer space, we have thought of Earth as a place which has no more mysteries for us to explain. But there is one part of the western Atlantic Ocean that has a very strange history. It lies between Florida and Bermuda. In this area, over 00 ships and planes have vanished since. The Hooda Sea, the graveyard of the Atlantic and the Devil's Triangle. This area has many names, but it is best known as the Bermuda Triangle. The 3 points of the triangle known as the Bermuda Triangle are Bermuda, Florida, and Puerto Rico. From until the present day over 000 lives have been lost in this area without trace. No bodies have been found. Many small boats and light aircraft have vanished in this area, but so have large ships. One of these was the Marine Sulphur Queen, which was 0 meters long. Another was the USA Cyclops, which disappeared along with all the 0 people she was carrying. What makes these losses even more mysterious is the fact that hardly any SOS signals are ever received from the ships and boats which disappear. Also, these things happen in good weather and without warning. Ships just seem to vanish into thin air. This fact has led some people to suggest all sorts of strange explanations. For example, some people believe that the planes fly into a hole in the sky from which they are unable to escape. Others think that the ships that have disappeared have been the victims of beings from outer space who have snatched them from the surface of the sea and taken them to some unknown world. Some people point out that the Bermuda Triangle is one of the two places on Earth where a magnetic compass does not point towards the magnetic north, and that because of this navigators often find themselves off course and in danger. Some people believe that the Bermuda Triangle does not exist and that all the accidents that have happened there are simply coincidence. Hugh Corrigan. UFOs on June. Kenneth Arnold, a young American businessman, was flying his private airplane above the Cascade Mountains in Washington. As he drew near Mount Rainier, he saw 9 circular objects moving at high speed past 25 miles away. There was a Douglas DC airliner in the sky at the same time, and Arnold thought that each of the objects was slightly smaller than his aircraft. The objects flew as if they were linked together. On landing, Arnold described what he had seen. He told a newspaper reporter that the objects flew like a saucer would if you skipped it across their water. His words provided a name for the objects he had seen. Kenneth Arnold was the first observer reported to have seen flying saucers. Within a few weeks of the report of what Arnold had seen, reports of similar sightings came from various parts of the world, from Canada, Australia, England, and Iran. From the start, there was a great deal of guessing about what the flying saucers might be. An American newspaper reporter stated that the saucers were, in fact, a new secret type of aircraft, a combination of helicopter and fast jet plane. This proved to be incorrect. A so-called Cold War was in progress between the United States and the Soviet Union, and one famous newspaper writer suggested that the saucers were a new type of spy aircraft sent out from Russia. Another idea was that the flying saucers came from outer space, sent by beings from another world. In time, the term flying saucer has given way to the more scientific one, unidentified flying object. And for over 2 decades a great deal of investigation was carried out into UFOs in the United States. Sightings of UFOs were not new. Reports of such objects date back 3,000 years. Some people include among these reports of fiery chariots, glowing lights and strange clouds which are mentioned in the Bible. In the early days of the Roman Empire, a round object that looked like a globe or a shield was said to have been seen moving across the sky. On another occasion, a fiery globe, brighter than the sun, was reported to have been seen, first falling towards the earth and then rising again. Similar stories were told in the Middle Ages. Medieval writers described bright lights, balls, discs and strange shapes that were seen in the sky. A large brightly lighted object shaped like a cylinder was reported to have been seen over London. On August, an astronomer named Cuvier saw a strange red object in the sky over Marseille, France. In January and February, unknown airships were seen at various times over many different places in Britain. In July, a UFO flew over New York. It shone brilliantly and gave forth a sound described as a great swish, a persistent hiss and a faraway roar. It was lost to sight when it fell below the horizon, possibly falling into the sea. Experts declared that the object was a large meteorite, but not everyone who saw it agreed. In the years before World War II, there were frequent reports of aircraft crashing into the sea without leaving a trace and without any known aircraft being missing. Over the years, many photographs of objects said to be flying saucers have been produced by various people. Some of them have been shown to be fakes. The others have not been accepted as genuine pictures of UFOs beyond reasonable doubt. What are these UFOs? Are they sent from outer space? Do they contain beings from other worlds? Some people think so. Gabriel Green, president of the Amalgamated Flying Saucer Clubs of America, is one of them. He has said, inhabitants of other worlds are holding off their visitation to the troubled Earth because they feel that they would either be worshipped as gods or feared as conquerors. Perhaps we will have to wait for an explanation of UFOs until we receive it from someone from another world. How Einstein discovered the law of relativity, adapted by C.H. Chaplin. I first met Einstein in the great scientist had been invited to California to lecture. I received a telephone call from Universal Studios, saying that Professor Einstein would like to meet me. I was so thrilled I gladly accepted the invitation. So we met at the Universal Studios for lunch, the professor, his wife, his secretary and his assistant professor. Mrs. Einstein spoke English very well. In fact, better than the professor. She was extremely proud of him and frankly enjoyed being the wife of the great physicist. She did not even try to hide the fact. After lunch, while Einstein was being shown around the studio, Mrs. Einstein took me aside and whispered, "Why don't you invite the professor to your house? I know he will be delighted to have a nice quiet chat with just ourselves." It was to be a small affair, and I invited only 2 other friends. At dinner she told me the story of the morning when the theory of relativity first came to his mind. The doctor came down in his dressing gown as usual for breakfast, but he hardly touched a thing. I thought something was wrong, so I asked what was troubling him. "Darling," he said, "I have a wonderful idea." And after drinking his coffee, he went to the piano and started playing. Now and again he stopped, reached for his pencil, made a few notes, then repeated, "I've got a wonderful idea, a marvelous idea." I said, "What's the matter with you? Why don't you tell me what it is?" He said, "I can't tell you yet. I still have to work it out." She told me he continued playing the piano and making notes for half an hour. Then he went upstairs to his study, telling her that he did not want anyone to disturb him, and remained there for 2 weeks. "Each day I sent him up his meals," she said, "and in the evening he walked a little for exercise, then returned to his work again. At last," she said, "he appeared looking very pale and tired. In his hand he held 2 sheets of paper. That's it," he told me, putting the sheets of paper on the table, "and that was his theory of relativity." Alfred Nobel, a man of contrasts. Alfred Nobel, the great Swedish inventor and industrialist, was a man of many contrasts. He was a son of a bankrupt, but became a millionaire, a scientist who cared for literature, an industrialist who managed to remain an idealist. He made a fortune but lived a simple life, and although cheerful in company he was often sad when remained alone. A lover of mankind, never had a wife or family to love him, a patriotic son of his native land, he died alone in a foreign country. He invented a new explosive, dynamite, to improve the peacetime industries of mining and road building, but saw it used as a weapon of war to kill and injure people. During his useful life he often felt he was useless. World famous for his works, he was never personally well known, for while avoided publicity, he never expected any reward for what he had done. He once said that he did not see that he had deserved any fame and that he had no taste for it. However, since his death, his name has brought fame and glory to others. He was born in Stockholm on October, but moved to Russia with his parents where his father, Emanuel, made a strong position for himself in the engineering industry. Emanuel Nobel invented the landmine and got plenty of money for it from government orders during the Crimean War, but then, quite suddenly went bankrupt. Most of the family went back to Sweden. 4 years later Alfred returned to, beginning his own study of explosives in his father's laboratory. It so occurred that he had never been to school or university but had studied privately, and by the time he was 20 was a skillful chemist and excellent linguist, having mastered Swedish, Russian, German, and English. Like his father, Alfred Nobel was imaginative and inventive, but he had better luck in business and showed more financial sense. He was quick to see industrial openings for his scientific inventions and built up over 0 companies in 0 different countries. Indeed, his greatness lay in his outstanding ability to combine the qualities of an original scientist with those of a forward-looking industrialist. But Nobel was never really concerned about making money or even making scientific discoveries. Seldom happy, he was always searching for a meaning to life, and from his youth had taken a serious interest in literature and philosophy. Probably because he could not find ordinary human love, he never married. He began to care deeply about the whole mankind. He took every opportunity to help the poor. He used to say that he would rather take care of the stomachs of the living than the glory of the dead in the form of stone memorials. His greatest wish, however, was to see an end to wars, and thus peace between nations, and he spent much time and money working for the cause until his death in Italy in his famous will, in which he left money to provide prizes for outstanding work in physics, chemistry, physiology, medicine, literature, and peace, is a memorial to his interests and ideals. And so the man who often believed that he was useless and has done little to justify his life is remembered and respected long after his death. Nobel's ideals, which he expressed long before the threat of nuclear war, have become the ideals of all progressive people of the world. According to Nobel's will, the capital was to be safely invested to form a fund. The interest on this fund is to be distributed annually in the form of prizes to those who, during the previous year, has done work of the greatest use to mankind. This interest is to be divided into 5 parts and distributed as follows: 1 part to the person who has made the most important discovery or invention within the field of physics, 1 part to the person who has made the most important chemical discovery or improvement, 1 part to the person who has made the most important discovery within the field of physiology or medicine, 1 part to the person who has produced the most outstanding work within the field of literature, and 1 part to the person who has done the most for brotherhood between nations, for the abolition or reduction of permanent armies, and for the organization and encouragement of peace conferences. In his will, Nobel wrote that it was his wish that in choosing the prize winner no consideration should be given to the nationality of the candidates, but that the most worthy should receive the prize, whether he be a Scandinavian or not. This will was written in Paris, on November. Since Nobel's death, many outstanding scientists, writers and public figures from different countries have become Nobel Prize winners. Michael Faraday was born in London in a poor family, and as a boy he did not learn much. When he was 13, he got some work in a bookseller's shop. He lived among books, and he began to read some of them. The boy could not read every book in the shop because he was busy and had not much time, so he began to choose the books which he liked best. He soon found out that his main interest was in science, and especially in electricity. As any true scientist, Faraday wanted to make experiments, but he had too little money. Faraday heard of talks on science which were being given by one of the greatest scientists of the time, Sir Humphrey Davy. As he sat and listened to the great man, he made notes. Faraday wanted to give his life to science, so he wrote a letter to Sir Humphrey Davy and asked for his help. Sir Humphrey invited Faraday to come to see him, and gave him some research to do. Faraday was delighted. His work at first was only to wash and prepare all the things which Davy and his fellow scientists were to use in their experiments, but he spent a lot of time with scientists and could listen to what they said, and he could watch their work. Sir Humphrey sometimes traveled in Europe, where he went to meet the great scientists of other countries, and one day he decided to make another of these trips. He asked Faraday if he wanted to come with him. Faraday, of course, was thrilled and accepted the invitation. He had never been more than a few miles from London in his life. Faraday greatly enjoyed his time in Europe, but he was not really sorry at the end of the journey because he was now able to continue his own work and experiments in England. He was wondering whether a magnet could be made to give an electric current. Faraday was absolutely certain that a current could be made, but he had very little time for experiments. His outside work took all his time. Could stop his outside work, of course, but if he did so, he would lose most of the £1,000 a year which he got. He had to choose between science and money, and he chose science. At first he was quite unable to make an electric current with his magnets, but one day a wonderful idea occurred to him, moved the magnet near the wire, and then he got what he wanted, an electric current in the wire. Of course, he still had to develop the idea. After several experiments of this kind he made a machine. It was the beginning of all the great machines that make electricity today. All modern turbines are made on the principles that were developed by Faraday. His discovery was the beginning of the electrical age, which changed the face of the earth. After Who Did It First by G. C. Thornley, The discovery of the X-ray scientists working on a problem do not know and sometimes can't even guess what the final result will be. Professor Jun was a physicist at the University of Würzburg in Germany. Late on Friday, November, he was doing an experiment in his laboratory when he noticed something extraordinary. He had covered an electric bulb with black cardboard, and when he switched on the current he saw little dancing lights on his table. Now the bulb was completely covered. How then could any ray penetrate? On the table there were some pieces of paper which had been covered with metal salts. It was on this paper that the lights were shining. Professor Jun took a piece of this paper and held it at a distance from the lamp. Between it and the lamp he placed a number of objects, a book, a pack of cards, a piece of wood and a door key. The ray penetrated every one of them except the key. This mysterious ray could shine through everything except the metal. He called his wife into the laboratory and asked her to hold her hand between the lamp and the photographic plate. She was very surprised by this request, but she obediently held up her hand for a quarter of an hour, and when the plate was developed there was a picture of the bones of her hand and of the ring on one finger. The ray could pass through the flesh and not through the bone or the ring. At a scientific meeting where he described what happened, Professor Jun called this new ray the unknown, the X-ray. Doctors quickly saw how this could be used, and soon there were X-ray machines in all the big hospitals. At first the doctors did not understand how powerful the rays were and many of them were injured, losing a finger or an arm through the exposure to X-rays when they were using the machines. The most obvious use for this discovery was to make it possible for doctors and surgeons to see exactly how a bone was fractured. Other uses came later. It was found that these rays could be used to destroy cancer cells, just as they destroyed the healthy cells of the doctors who first used the machine. Methods were found later by which ulcers in the stomach could be located. The lungs could be X-rayed to show if there was any tuberculosis present. Mass X-ray units are sent around to factories and detect early signs of trouble in the lungs. Unfortunately for Professor Jun, whose discovery did so much for medical science, envious colleagues spread the story that he had stolen his discovery from a laboratory assistant who worked for him. He died, poor and forgotten, in After Britain in the Modern World, the 20th Century by Ian Nash and A.M. Newth.